Hi, I'm Stephanie. I'm from Sophomore Magazine, and we are here with both Kim and Sarah to talk about ethical fashion.
I'm Sarah Peel, and I'm the program director at Fashion Takes Action, which is Canada's only nonprofit that works both with the fashion industry and consumers around basically connecting the dots between sustainability and making fashion and the fashion that we wear. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Citizenne, which is a brand new kind of personal styling consultancy.
Hi, my name is Kim, and I'm a co-founder and CEO of a new company here in Toronto called UnCo, and we actually build capsule wardrobes for women. So essentially 6 to 12 pieces, we show you how to wear them 20, 30 different ways.
The first thing that I really want to dive into is what's the definition of sustainable fashion for you, and what values underlie the formation of that definition?
The way I kind of picture it is two ways. So one, how the product is actually made. So whether that's from like upcycled materials, so materials that used to have a different life of its own and now made into a new garment, or using an organic cotton kind of organic way of fibers. And then the second one I would say actually is how a business operates. So a really good example of that too is like simple decisions of like packaging. Okay, are we gonna use recycled paper for packaging, or are we gonna buy new? And where are you buying it from? Female owned, or is it a huge chain? So that's how I kind of see sustainability. It's super diverse, and I think that comes into the whole sustainable fashion industry too.
Well, I'd say fashion that takes less, gives back more, and aims for that circular approach in as many ways as it can. And I would say the values for me, if we're talking about from a wearer's point of view, that there is a joy and a pleasure in wearing it because it's great style, it's well designed, that there's an emotional connection. And then finally, I would say that there's grace for the journey. I think many of us assume that sustainability is a black and white thing, and that perfection is the only appropriate end point. But sustainability is a journey, and I think we need to approach it with way less judgment of others, as individuals or of brands, because you got to start somewhere.
Do you think independent or local brands have more of a role in sustainability, or have more of a responsibility, or do you think that's like a flawed way of thinking?
I don't think necessarily they have more of a role. I think they have a role to play, absolutely. I don't think one's weighted more versus like, let's say something like fair trade. I think it's all part of the bigger picture of sustainable fashion. I don't know if you...
Well, I would say that they are part of the recipe. Mm-hmm. They're one of the ways that a consumer can approach sustainability, because even if, let's say, the fabric, the textile choices that a designer would use, who is local, it might still be a rayon or a polyester, which isn't sustainable, but it is sourced from bolt ends or dead stock, which would go to waste, and it's produced locally, so less of a carbon footprint. That's a great option. But local designers can't compete on scale. They can't compete on quantity. People are still going to be shopping at the mall. So one of the things that we teach in our workshop, it's a grade 4 to 12 workshop called My Clothes, My World. And those kids are not going to designer marketplaces. They're shopping at the mall, or they're shopping online. And one of the tools that we teach them is, well, we call it the 7 R's of Fashion Crusaders. And one of the R's is research. So use the tools that are out there, like apps like the Good On You app, to do research on brands, and how does that connect to your values?
So there's like no one right answer, or like one right way to be sustainable?
Absolutely not. And I think that gives us, going back to my comment about the valuing grace, it creates a lot more room and a lot more freedom for people to explore and be in process, and also to share with other people. Because if it's all about judgment and trying to be perfect, you might not share with other people. Brands might not share the little things that they're doing behind the scenes, if they feel that other people are going to judge them for not being perfect.
Do you think that kind of like the organic food movement, that sustainable or ethical fashion has kind of like an elitist approach to it or feel to it at all?
Generally speaking, I would say yes. Like, so someone who's, a young person, and doesn't come from a lot of wealth, sustainable fashion looked pretty overwhelming from the outside looking in, for sure. And I think there's a lot of stigma around that, like as in, okay, to buy fair trade or to buy responsibly, it's like, $100 to $200 per garment. And you know what? That's fair. That is kind of expensive from what we're used to compared to the $20 shirt you'll see at H&M. But again, I think it really comes down to consumption and how much we consume. If you're only buying, let's say, your one responsibly made in Canada white tee, that's it's $80, but then you never have to buy it over the next like 4 or 5 months. Where let's say you're turning over your H&M shirt like probably like every other week, just because it's like poor quality and not made as well. Well, then, you weigh that pros and cons. So you put the upfront investment now, but then you don't have to buy it again over in the near future. But I do think overall, though, it has that stigma of an elitist. So, I try to convince my friends too. It's like, no, think of it this way. Like, think of it like, you make the investment now and you don't have to repeat it or buy again in the near future. But, it's definitely, tearing down that stigma of the $20 shirt versus the $100 shirt. That's still a lot of work needs to be done around that, I think.
I think that there's there's a sense of entitlement out there that we should be able to shop as much as we want and have everything that we want when we want it, and as many different options for our outfits as possible. And I think when you approach it that way, of course you can't afford, it's very inaccessible to afford a designer or organic fair trade t-shirt. However, from the garment workers' perspective, how is us insisting that t-shirt is $5 to $20, that they work in unsafe, unfair conditions and they don't have a living wage, how is that not elitist of us to insist that we have cheap clothing? If you're thinking about creating a sustainable wardrobe, I don't think that's elitist at all. It's called secondhand clothes. It's called the hand-me-downs. It's really, really accessible. And it's actually really, really important because in the past 20 years, globally, we consume 400% more clothes than we did just 20 years ago. And a lot of that ends up in the landfill. In Ontario, we know that 15% of textiles are recycled or like sent to the donation bins, and the rest, 85%, goes to landfill. There are many people who don't feel that that they don't understand that you can donate every textile in your household, your linens, your towels, your old underwear, your holey socks, everything, even scraps of fabric. When that goes to the donation bin, and let's say that it goes to Value Village, for example, they have a chief environmental officer. He's all about how can we recycle these items. And so the stuff that can't go on the store racks actually gets rerouted to those who do rags, those who resell men's shoes, those who resell men's polo shirts, and then it gets sold internationally. The fact that people don't understand that everything can be donated, even the stuff that you wouldn't want somebody else to be wearing, and that's why it ends up in landfill.
For both of you, what was your main challenge in shifting to a more sustainable fashion mindset?
I think for me, definitely was price point. A lot of my experience, was definitely like, the $20 shirt, and like switching my whole mentality of how I perceive clothes and, investments for the future. It was definitely a jump from my mentality before to now thinking, okay, so when I buy something, I want it to last. I don't want to just buy to buy, and I want something that works with what I already have, and vice versa. Yeah, so I think that was one of the larger challenges, and I'm always conscious of how I think because, you know, we live in a society where literally you see advertisements and propaganda of to consume, and almost everything we do is consuming, you know? So it's about shifting that whole mentality, being conscious of, you know, what you already have, what you need versus want. But definitely like watching the documentary Minimalism like really helped me. And so like that's something that I personally identify with as like a modern minimalist, you could call it. Yeah.
I would say cost too.
Yeah.
Or maybe it started with the consuming less, because I still want, like, even responsible fashion brands on Instagram are trying to convince you to buy their, you know, their garments. And they're pretty. And I think as humans, we're hardwired for that dopamine effect. We want something new. We want that hit of pleasure. And the way our modern society works is that we shop to meet that fix. So there's a little bit of deprogramming, but I think the shift in between going for cheap and looking for cost per wear, and so value. What is the value to me? Like, this dress is from Third Floor Studio. I spent over $150 on it, but that was 3 years ago, and I wear it in the winter, I wear it in the summer, I wear it with a belt, I wear it under things. It's a very diverse garment, and I still get compliments on it. So I have to think about the cost per wear. Now, each time I wear this, it's probably about $2. Okay, so that's different than thinking cheap the ticket price.
If you could change one thing about the fashion industry, what would that be?
I would say the fact that we have 25 seasons a year. Like, clothing is coming out onto racks every 2 weeks. We used to have fall, winter, spring, summer. The fact that we still have fashion weeks that say fall, winter, and spring, summer is actually, it's not even based in reality anymore. And I think if somehow there is this addiction in the fashion economic system, speaking to people, that dopamine effect, the pleasure principle, buy, this will make you happy, you'll look cute. It's only $15 for this summer dress. The fashion brands are addicted to that model. And so there's a ripple effect to us who are consuming that marketing. And I think if I could, you know, snap my fingers or wave my magic wand and change one thing, it would be maybe we can't go back to 2 seasons a year, but way less. And I think the ripple effect of that would affect the people who make our clothes, it would affect the environment, it would affect our own consumption patterns as well.
Yeah, there's so many things that like you want to change, so like picking one is definitely hard, but I do think something like a trend that's coming up is more gender fluid wear in fashion. So I do think that's the future of fashion, you know, rather than labeling like what's males, what's female, etc. So I do think that's going to be coming. So if I wanted to change it, maybe it happens sooner rather than later, just because as someone who doesn't really necessarily always like the feminine patterns or always likes the feminine fit, I definitely like something that just looks good on me. Like, why does it have to be male or female? So I'm definitely looking forward to that change in the fashion industry. And like one of our designers that we actually work with UnCo, her next collection is gender fluid. So it's really exciting. And I do think a lot more people are going to come out with stuff like that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us here at Sophomore for our ethical fashion issue. You can learn more about UnCo and Fashion Takes Action and Citizen below on the page, and read the full issue at sophomoremag.com.